Hello, family. Welcome back to the Explore the Extraordinary podcast. My name's Betty, and today I'm joined by Black Butterfly Goddess. And I recently saw you on Jeff Mara's podcast. I know that you went on it months ago, but I happened to catch it, and I was so excited to have you come and share with our community at IANDS. And Black Butterfly Goddess is an intuitive healer and psychic, and has a really amazing story of resilience and perseverance. I'm always really drawn to those stories. So I'm so grateful for your willingness to serve, and I'm going to toss it right over to you.
Awesome. Thank you, everybody. Thank you for having me here, Betty. First of all, my name is Tywanah Yvette, and I go by Black Butterfly Goddess. I am a fourth generation intuitive healer and psychic. I've recently found out. It's been an interesting journey. I have had 3 near-death experiences. I spoke about them on Jeff's podcast. One of them was complete renal failure, where I was literally told that if I had fallen asleep at home, I would have passed on. And I went into the void, and I somehow I wound up like pushing my way back into my body because I had 2 children that were still 8 and 10 at the time. And so I fought like heck to come back. The next one was I was saved pretty much by my middle child. She just had an unction that something was that she said she knew they were going to come home and find me deceased. She just had this overwhelming unction. And we used to live across the street from the high school, and my kids were in band, so I heard the drums start. I remember hearing the drums starting, and the garage door goes up, and I'm like, did you forget your water jug or your shorts? Or and she's like, Mom, get in the car. And so I'm freaking out. I'm thinking something happened to her sister who was in color guard. And she pushes me on the passenger side. This child had never driven longer than 1 mile, literally on the back roads of our houses. And by the time she had made the right turn onto the main road, I was seizing. And I got to see my mother there too. And each time, my mom has pushed me back. She always tells me, you're not done yet. You're not done yet. But the most meaningful time that set me through the dark night of the soul and my spiritual awakening journey, which I am so proud of myself for making it through, was I was with someone who was a terrible human being, and he was extremely verbally abusive. I didn't have much self-esteem to begin with, so the little bit that I had built up over my 40 something years on this earth had been chipped away, eaten away by this monster. And I had just returned to Atlanta from burying my brother-in-law in DC, and I hadn't even processed that. Like, I didn't cry at the funeral or anything because I'm trying to be my sister's support person. So, you hold it in so you can support your loved one. And I had this crazy feeling like in the pit of my stomach when I was at the airport. My best friend texts me. She's like, why don't you just go to your house tonight? Like, why don't you just go straight home? And I'm like, no, I'm really not up for the argument. He'll swear I'm cheating or whatever, even though I have cameras in my bedroom he has access to. I have cameras in the living room he has access to. And he picked me up from the airport, and I got in the car, and I'm trying to be all happy. And, I'm coming in on the last flight. So I'm trying to be happy. And I said, I forgot when I worked for presidential appointees, I forgot how great DC is for education. We should take your son. And the car got cold. And the whole time I'm like, oh, and, I'm combing over that one sentence over and over, like what could have triggered him. And we get home, and he says to me, I'm not going anywhere where you traipsed around with some other man. And like the look on my face was like, huh? Traipsed around? I just told you I worked for presidential appointees. I was on call 24/7. I barely saw my kids. And he started the argument. Something, and I now know what that something was, which is my mother, had me put my phone in my robe pocket and hit record. Because at this point, we've been going at this for 2 years, and I need to know I'm not losing my mind. And I left it on record. And at one point of the argument, I just remember my whole body went numb. And as if I were like a zombie or something, I just walked in the bedroom and laid in the bed. And he came in there starting, I wouldn't respond to him. I just laid there with my phone still on record for the whole night. And the next morning, we wake up and he starts in again. And I had that numb feeling, and I just walked over to the dresser, and I had just filled my sleeping pill prescription. I have epilepsy, and took every one of them, followed by coffee and vinegar. And that's where my spiritual awakening began. I put on my favorite sweatshirt that my kids had bought me, had butterflies on it, and I walked and laid down in the woods. And his response was, "Oh, great. Now I got to go to the pharmacy and get Ipecac." And I didn't care. I was just so numb. I was so ready to go. My children, they're all adults at this time. Like, what do I really have to fight for anymore? I remember the void being peaceful the other two times I was there. Why am I fighting for this life? And I kept saying to my daughter, I went somewhere, but my mother had blindfolded me so that for a while I didn't know where I went. I went to the ancestral plane. And in the ancestral plane were my stepdad, who, when he was in my life, I was a daddy's girl. I could do no wrong. And my real father was the monster, and my mother. And my daddy, he's looking down because he doesn't want to look at me. And he's just kind of shaking his head, no. And he goes, no, boom, boom. And I'm like, what do you mean? I'm tired. I'm worthless. I'm nobody. I have no purpose. The kids are grown. Why? And my mother goes, you have to go back. And I'm like, Mom, you keep sending me back. I don't have a purpose. I am worthless. Nobody loves me. And I'm just going on and on about that. And my mother goes, there are people waiting for you, and your purpose begins now. And she pushes me back into my body. And of course, you have to go through the normal things that would happen if you tried to take your life. But I then had an RTT hypnotherapy session. And because regular therapy for me, it was like we just keep going in the same circles. What is it healing if I keep talking about it? Whereas that RTT hypnotherapy, taking me back to each traumatic event in my subconscious, really allowed me to begin to love myself and to thank those versions of myself that fragmented from all of the trauma that I had. And so I did that. I moved back to DC. My sister asked me to, come home. She said, I think we need each other right now. And I agreed. And I did not need to stay in Atlanta where he was. Even here, he tried to call a bunch of times and cause arguments and nonsense. And it finally got to the point to where I said to myself, why are you responding? You're feeding into it. Why are you responding? So I blocked him. When I moved into my apartment, well, when I lived with my sister, I used to see her partner everywhere, and the dog would be barking in his direction, and I'm trying to move in the opposite direction because I'm like, my sister's not a spiritual believer. I can't explain to her that I'm watching him walk around the house, And so I'm trying to like hide and, not turn in the direction. And it was one of her days in the office, and I was sitting there playing with the dog, and then I'd watch TV for a little bit, and he stood in the kitchen doorway and he said something, and I went, what? And he goes, I knew you could hear me. And I'm like, oh my God. And he gives me this message from my sister, and I'm like, why can't you just write it on a Post-it note and leave it on her bed or something? Like, come on, she already thinks I'm weird. Like, why are you doing this? And he's like, because you're the only person she'll believe. She won't believe anybody else. And so I waited 9 months to relay that message to her. And when I moved into my apartment, my mother's voice became undeniably loud, and her presence got bigger and bigger, and her energy became stronger and stronger. And then I could see her. So I went through a lot of dark nights in here. My children had decided at the time they didn't want to be part of my life, rightfully so. My childhood trauma had spilled over into their lives quite a bit. And it was just too much, and I understand. And I think there's such brave women for that. But I got my mom back. The hole that had been left in my soul from the moment my mother passed was starting to be filled up with, all of these gifts and these abilities and my ancestors that she started introducing to me. And suddenly I wasn't lonely, I wasn't sad, I wasn't crying. Suddenly I loved myself. I caught myself one day where I got out the shower, and I used to have this habit where I would look down so I couldn't see myself in the mirror. And at some points I had covered my mirrors. And I looked up and I was like, there is so much of you to love. And it was the day I realized that I do love me. I am worth loving. And I do have gifts, and I'm going to stop hiding. And so I announced to the family that, yes, I am a psychic. I announced to the world on the season 7, episode 1 of another podcast that I am a psychic, and my gifts have gotten stronger and stronger. And so over a weekend, my soul sister, my spiritual mentor, and she's a coach. She's worked with me for like 10 years now. We built Black Butterfly Goddess over a weekend. And I started by doing readings, and now I've got women who are hurting in my mentorship and coaching program. And I've got hundreds of people, if not thousands, on social media who look up to me, who look for me every night. They literally, and if I don't go live, they will message me private, are you okay? Is everything okay? And the love and the respect and just the stories. Like, I saw you on Jeff Morrow's podcast, and I had the pills in my hand, and I've decided to stay. And I've been in an abusive relationship for 30 years, and you gave me the courage to leave. Those are the moments that there's no words for them. There's no words for those moments. And I get them often now. And people respect me. And I don't have to bend over backwards doing things that I don't want to do for anyone. They love me because I exist. That's it. Some of them have never met me in person. Hundreds of people have never met me in person, but they will message me, are you okay? I didn't see you live tonight. Is everything okay? And I finally have the love I always wanted in my life. I have it for me, and I have it from others. And I didn't need it to be from a man. My father's damage to me made me choose horrible people, horrible, horrible partners. And I always thought I needed the love of a man. And no, I needed the love of myself so I could love myself enough to be authentically who I am. And now I've got love from perfect strangers just because I am. And that's pretty much been like the Crypt Notes version of my story. But I get emotional when I talk about it because every night I inspire someone. Every night I touch someone's life, and you can't put a price tag on that. You can't put anything on that. It's just beautiful that I feel needed. And I am needed by so many broken people. So I started a mentorship / coaching program. My spiritual mentor got on me the other day, and she asked me, what makes you think you're not a coach? And I said, well, because I don't have the certification. And she said, so you think every coach has a certification? And I said, well, yeah, I did. You have it, And she goes, no, honey, when you are guiding people into their light, you're coaching them. She said, you don't have to call yourself a mentor. You are a coach. And so I've got 4 beautiful souls working so hard in my mentorship program right now, and it was only released a month ago. It's not like it's been out there for a year. It was literally released a month ago. 2 of them are men, and it's just like they want to be accountable to me. They want to do the work. One of them, I wish I could say her name, but I tell the story every night on TikTok. If she can do it, no one else has an excuse, because she's a nurse. She works 12-hour shifts. She's in school for her RN to get, higher certifications, and she's got a family. Yet every day I get an email with the answers to her journal questions. That's somebody who is hungry for healing. So I tell people on my TikToks all the time, you all, none of your excuses matter, because she's in this room with us, and when you really want it, you go for it. And that's what's happened in my life. And even with my children, you know, when I was on Jeff Morris' podcast, they didn't want anything to do with me. And I got a text last Wednesday, and I got to spend the whole day with my grandbabies. And I hadn't seen them in 5 years. So even though it's just a little bit of healing, it's healing. It's something. They saw a different version of mom. Yes, I looked the same in physical form, but what they saw was somebody who didn't refer to them as her daughters. She referred to them as grown women. And I asked, is it okay if I hug the babies? Is it okay if I take photos with the babies? May I please have a photo with you? And those are things my children never saw of me. So, I could see the skepticism, kind of like the side eye thing, where they're like, has she actually done it? Like, did she finally change? I have remained single and celibate, happy, happier in my life than I've ever been. If anybody came into my life, the bar is set so high, because I'm such a powerful being, that now that I know my power, and now that I receive and accept my power and my calling, that it cannot be someone with any insecurities whatsoever. It's really truly going to have to be someone divinely guided. But I am prepared, and I am okay with spending the rest of this lifetime alone, if it means that I get to touch people's lives in the way that I've been doing. So that's me.
Thanks so much for sharing. Wow, I really, really enjoyed listening to you. And I love the excitement and the passion that you have for how your life has transformed. And I also really appreciate you talking about the fact that just because you had some sort of transformative experience doesn't mean that it spills over into the people in your lives who you might have harmed or affected in some negative way
Hmm.
throughout. Because I think that some people think that when you have a transformative experience, the whole world opens up, everything gets so much better. And that's kind of where envy comes in. People are like, well, I want an
No.
experience like that. But yeah, there's still wreckage from the past that needs to slowly and steadily be cleaned up. And I love that you were open enough to share about that. So thank you for
Yes, my
that.
pleasure.
Yeah, I kind of want to ask a little bit about a little bit more about the spiritual experience itself, and maybe talk a little bit about what has your life been like since then. So you said that you
Hmm.
went to the ancestral plane,
Yes.
and I'm wondering if you can share a little bit more about how you connect with that plane now.
So the ancestral plane for me, because when I tried to take my life, I went and laid in the trees. It was a line of a forest, and there was like this kind of imaginative doorway to the forest, but my mother and my stepfather were blocking that that point where you could cross over into the forest. And it it's definitely a powerful place. And now I can connect with all of my ancestors right here. So my mother taught me each of their energy, how to recognize them energetically first, and then she removed the blindfold so that I can physically see them. and a lot of people around me can't, but I can physically see them. And I'm talking about even like my great grandmother 4 generations back, who that was hysterical finding out who she was, because my mother's mentioning names and I'm learning energies and things like that, and then she says Jerusha, and I said, who the heck is Jerusha? I've never heard that name in my life. And my mother has always been a comical woman. She goes, you have the Google, look it up. And now everybody on TikTok says Mama Lorraine said the Google. So I went on Ancestry and Family Search, and I spent a few weeks, digging back. And there's one photo in my entire lineage, and it's the headstone that says Jerusha Reeve, my 4th great grandmother. And so she's a little Irish woman, and we like her to stay. She sits at the dining room sipping tea. I literally do make her tea every day, like every day. And she sits at the dining room table. She's a fiery little pistol. She does not like disrespect. So when people come into the TikToks being disrespectful, you want to keep Gigi Jerusha on that side of the apartment, because once she comes on this side, we're channeling, and the things that she says sometimes cannot be so nice. Um, I I found out my pop-up was with me, so he'll stand over my left shoulder if there's a threat. My daddy will stand right in front of me if there's a threat. Even my childhood dog, the husky, Candy, she's here. My mother always remains on my right side, and she's constantly talking. The only time my mother's not talking is when she allows me to go to sleep. But she even went so far yesterday, and she'll say to me when I get up, somebody needs you, and I'll log on to TikTok live immediately. The night before last, I'm sorry, my nights and days are all mixed up because I'm awake all night, but night before last, an alarm went off on my phone at 12:45 a.m. and I'm like, okay, I know I didn't set that. The only time I set alarms for that time is when I have a flight to catch in the morning. I did not set that alarm. So I'm all confused, and I come out the bedroom and I'm like, Mom, what are you doing? Like, what are you up to now? And I walk in the kitchen and a whole fresh pot of coffee is there. I'm like, okay, you are really up to something. And she goes, somebody needs you now. So it was like, you don't have to, the excuse of you having to make your coffee is not there. Like, my mom runs the electronics in this house. Even Alexa, when she's tired of listening to my music, she switches it to Motown, and my followers have seen all of this. So yesterday there was one of my followers, the one that I spoke so highly of, that's in my mentorship program. She was going through a very hard time. They had to put her son's service dog down, and she was struggling. She had to go to work and she was struggling. And so, we just held space for her. And it was so funny because usually by that time I would have had 50 or 60 people in my live, and it stayed under 10. And we just held space for her. And a lot of us there have become like family. When one is down or whatever, we just hold space for one another. And they all have gotten familiar with the different energies that are around me. They'll see this light flicker if Pop Pop's behind me. They'll see my ring light flicker when my daddy's in front of me. Like, if they had not seen it with their own eyes, they wouldn't believe it. And then Mom channeled yesterday, which was interesting because this eye, I happened to look up in the screen and I said, uh-oh, she's going to channel, because this eye turned kind of a bluish green color. And I'm like, oh God, Mom's going to channel. And before I could try to stop her, I was asking everybody, what did I say? Because I don't remember. When I'm channeling, I don't remember what was said. I don't know who was there yet or what was said. And so what they said was that apparently my ex was watching the live, and I would have had no way of knowing that. And she channeled some not so nice things and even mentioned his name, and I have kept his name private, since then. But she said some not so kind things and basically told him, move on, leave her alone, don't watch her. You don't have the authority, move on. And I'm putting that nicely. She didn't say it so kindly.
Wow, that's really beautiful. So what's beautiful is that you've really come into your gifts, it sounds,
Yes.
and
Yes.
I'm curious if you've had moments of hesitation, because that seems like you're really blasted wide open, and that could be a little jarring if you're kind of going from not having that experience to then having so much experience. What's that process been like for you, integrating into your gifts?
It wasn't easy. My coach, my soul sister, she's been very vital in all of this because she's been doing it for 13 years, whereas for me, I was a year in. And so she would coach, come on live, come on TikTok live. And I remember saying to her one day, what if I give somebody the wrong message? And she said, as authentic as you are and as cautious as you are, it will never happen. And after she told me that, I went live one time and then I waited another 2 months to go live again. And she was like, that's it, hop on. We're going, and she would stay in the room with me um, until I got to the point to where I just started doing it myself. And as far as the channeling is concerned, the first time I channeled, I was terrified because I didn't know what happened. My body felt weak. I felt like this electricity movement through my body. And it was an ex-friend's grandmother who was frantically trying to tell her that if she did not heal, she was going to pass on. So I've learned to kind of recognize when my people are going to try to jump in, and I know how to move the energy around a little bit to maybe pause. But if there's a threat, I don't get that. They don't allow me that control. My pop-up has channeled and my voice will get deeper and suddenly a Caribbean accent appears. So if he's channeling, it's definitely a threat. My pop-up is a man of very few words. He just stands behind me and guards and but when he has come through, my voice gets deeper and I've got this Caribbean accent. So Gigi Jerusha, Mom, and Pop Up are the only three who have channeled through me thus far in the house. Um, I do my best to keep other people's ancestors out of my living room. We had one come in last night and the person wouldn't come forward, so I couldn't give them the message. I saw him standing right at my patio door. And, I asked whose grandfather just passed on because he's standing in front of my door, my patio door. And the person I could, you can feel the energies. And so I could feel their hesitation. And I said, they have a message, but I can't deliver the message until you come forward. And they were too afraid to come forward. So, but usually my mother, my dad, my brother, who also is with me, he's the tricky one. He likes to hide things when I really need them. He thinks it's funny. My brother was always a jokey person. But usually my brother is at my bedroom window guarding, and my stepdad is at my patio door guarding. But this person apparently was safe and was really just trying to get a message through to their loved one. But that loved one wasn't ready to receive it yet.
Thanks for sharing that. I'm wondering if you can share a little bit about, well, I have a couple different questions running through my mind. My first question is, what does the rest of your family think about your spiritual gifts? Like, you're talking about the fact that you're connected to your family members who have crossed over. Is the rest of your family receptive to this, or is this just something that you have?
I am the only one out of my siblings who has this gift. My father, now I have two sets of siblings. My father had children from his first marriage, and those siblings, even though they're very, very religious, they're accepting and loving of me. So that does not deter our relationship. And in fact, they will call me and say, hey, I saw your podcast. I'm so proud of you. Things like that, even though I'm telling also about the trauma that happened to me at 15 years old. Um, My mother's children, on the other hand, my oldest sister and I have nothing for her. I wish her well over there. My brother, never want to see him again. I wish him well over there. And my sister, who I moved back here for, she's really trying. And I noticed a slight change in her after I gave her that message, because that message was so cryptic, only she could understand it. The one that her passed on, partner gave me to give to her. It was so cryptic. And, at first she kind of tried to shut down and deny it. She's very type A, she's a Scorpio, So at first she was trying to, well, what do you mean? And I'm like, look, you guys were together. I don't know what this means. I'm just telling you the words that are being said. And lately, like even yesterday, she was like, "How was your night?" And because we met up, and she looked at me. She said, "You look exhausted." I said, "Yeah, it was a very spiritually charged night." And she goes, "Well, what happened?" I said, "Well, your mother set an alarm on my phone and made coffee before I got in the kitchen." She goes, "You had to have programmed it." I said, "What time would I program coffee for?" Because I program the coffee maker at her house when I'm there. She goes, "You always program for 3 a.m." I said, "Exactly, not 12:45 a.m." And she was like, "Well, at least when she woke you up, she made you coffee." So, I really see her trying to think out of the box with it, and I don't force it on her. Um, I just allow her to see the evidence of it, if you get what I'm saying.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for sharing that. That question definitely came to the forefront of my mind. I want to know about, we're talking about a dense experience, something like suicide or feeling, totally helpless and hopeless. And I want to know if you maybe have a message if somebody's listening and they're in that same space right now.
You are worth so much. You you do not understand how much greatness there is for you on the other side of that challenge. Um, you are loved. You are needed in this universe. You were put here for a reason. And if nobody else tells you they love you, I love you. Find me, and I will stay up with you. But do not go to that desperate place. I've got you. People have you. There is actual love out here.
That's really well said. I've really enjoyed our time together today. I want to see if there's anything else that you'd like to share to feel more complete about this time.
I just want everybody to start being yourself. So many times when we grow up, we wear these masks of expectations. I have to be this to this person, this to this person. And there is no greater feeling than being able to be yourself and being unapologetic about it.
Wow, thank you so much. So all the information to connect with you is going to be in the liner notes of this episode. And again, I thank you for your service to our community, and we'll
Thank
see you next
you.
time.
Alrighty.